In today's episode of the Giraldo Show, we're going to be taking a little bit of a different turn in today's episode, and instead of talking about politics due to the holiday season, I'm going to be talking about my personal top 5 favorite movies of all time. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to the Giraldo Show. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Giraldo Show. I am your host, Sebastian Giraldo. First of all, I want to give a quick apology to all of my fans. I've missed the past couple of days due to school, final exams, etc. It's been pretty difficult so far, but I am back, and as I mentioned on Twitter and on my Instagram story, but I'll mention it again. Today, I'm not releasing an episode today on Monday that I'm recording. I'm recording multiple episodes right now so that on Tuesday and Thursday of this week, I'll be releasing 2 episodes. Today's episode is going to be released tomorrow on Tuesday. The next episode, which is going to be, give you a sneak peek, I'm going to tell you about the actual story of what happened on Thanksgiving. And next Monday, I'm going to be releasing a new episode, but I don't know what it's going to be about just yet. But for today's episode, I just wanted to give a quick break on politics. We had so much big things happen over the weekend. We had the Democratic debates, which actually, that's the one thing about politics that I do want to get into, because I was looking at the poll numbers today, and it was extremely interesting because we had, for the first time and for a very long time so far, we have a change in poll numbers. So right now, Joe Biden is almost at 30% again. So he's been on the upsale. He's been going up in terms of his poll numbers. Bernie Sanders is actually overtaking Elizabeth Warren by 0.8%. He's actually now at 19.3%, and Elizabeth Warren is at 18.5%. Now, this is a bit surprising to me. I thought Warren would have a decent campaign, but I think a big reason for that is mostly due to her poor performances at the Democratic debates, if you're just asking me. Pete Buttigieg at 7.8%, Kamala Harris at 4%, Andrew Yang at 2.8%, Michael Bloomberg, who recently announced his race in the presidency, at 2.3%, Tulsi Gabbard at 2%, Amy Klobuchar at 1.5%, Tom Steyer at 1.3%, Cory Booker at 1.3%, Julian Castro at 1%, and Michael Bennet at 0.8%. So those are the most recent poll numbers. Again, links in the description of this episode. But today's episode, again, as I mentioned in the little teaser in the beginning of the episode, I want to take a little bit of a step back. Every once in a while, sometimes politics, I know this is a political show, but every once in a while, I want to lighten things up a bit. Today and Thursday's episode won't necessarily be all about politics. I'm going to talk about a little bit about politics on Thursday due to Thanksgiving, that entire debacle of the actual story. But today I wanted to go through a topic that I was recently introduced to that some people have asked me recently, family members and friends, of what are my top 5 favorite movies of all time. And I'll talk about each movie that I like, starting from number 5 and going to number 1, and I'll talk about each of the things that I like about it. I'll try not to get too political on it, but if there's a message that I do want to show that could potentially be politically involved, then I will obviously get into it. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into my number 5 movie. And number 5 and number 4 have taken a bit, they've been fighting with each other for a little bit in my book, because my number 5 I've watched very recently. I've actually watched it 3 times in total, but twice in the past couple of weeks. And my number 4 spot I've watched around a couple months ago. So my number 5 movie of all time is The Truman Show, starring Jim Carrey. For those who don't know, it's Jim Carrey playing this character called Truman Burbank, who is, his entire life is a television show. His entire life has been built up by this creator of this show, who, since his birth, they have been filming his entire life, trying to make him the star of the show, and he's the star of the show. Millions and millions of people worldwide watch his 24-hour, 7 days a week, no commercial interruption stream of a television show, and they buy merchandise, they buy products that are on the show, products that are advertised on the show. And for everything for Truman, it seems pretty normal for him until weird things start happening. At the beginning of the movie, I'll try not to spoil what happens specifically, but a light falls from the sky, that kind of starts to indicate that maybe not everything meets the eye. And then throughout the movie, we have Truman starting to realize exactly what's happening. He's starting to see a lot of strange coincidences with pictures, with people, with overall setting. He just finds it extremely odd. There's even one point in the movie where he just tries to escape, and as much as he tried, he could not get through. But one of the reasons why I like this movie so much, Jim Carrey, first of all, I know his political views are a bit extreme, as some people might have seen the Bill Maher special that he did, where he said we need to embrace socialism, which I think is not a good strategy, but I won't get into his political beliefs. He did an incredible job as the role, starting off as this comical person that seems like a sitcom. It's Truman, he seems like he's in a sitcom. His character at the beginning acts like he's in a sitcom, just doing a bunch of catchphrases and making laughs and stuff. But as the show progresses, as his character progresses, he starts to portray more of a realistic sense, a bit more craziness. And I think this movie, out of my top 5, I think this has the strongest political messages in personal freedom, because what Truman thinks he has freedom. He thinks he has choice, but he really doesn't. He cannot leave his situation. He is trapped. I can almost compare it to the East Berliners. I think it was East Berlin that was inside the wall where they could not leave. The Soviets had control of that part of Berlin, and they made it seem like it was all great. But in reality, the people inside the wall, the Berlin Wall, had no choice to escape to the Western civilized culture and just better overall economic structure of the other side of Berlin. And I think this is some messages portrayed in The Truman Show. We have Truman Burbank being someone who thinks he has all the choices in the world, but in reality, while the creator of the show makes Truman think that he has a choice, his actions are really being controlled. He's being recorded everywhere. His movements are being tracked everywhere. Every single person in the town knows him, and it's a pretty significantly sized town. I mean, at one point in the movie, you get to see the entire dome where the entire show is placed, and it's pretty big, and there's a lot of people. Everyone knows who he is. Some people in the show actually break character a little bit, like a little girl breaks character to try to tell us, the audience, that this might not be all that it seems, even though we figured that out from the beginning. And eventually it has a good ending at the end. I won't tell you what the ending is. I highly recommend the movie. It's a great film. I don't know where it used to be on Netflix. I don't know where you could stream it now. Probably on some other website. Don't do anything illegal. I'm not promoting anything illegal, but if you can find it, buy it. It came out back in the late 90s. Great film. I highly recommend it. My number 4 film is this little Italian film that I watched in my film class in senior year of high school, called Cinema Paradiso. Full title is Nuovo Cinema Paradiso. It's an entirely Italian film, won Best Foreign Language Film in the Oscars back in the mid-90s, I believe it was. And it's a story about this young boy named Salvatore De Vita, and his entire... It's almost a coming-of-age story. He starts off as a little boy in a little town in Italy that just recently gets a movie theater. And this is back when movie theaters were just starting to become a thing, so there had to be someone running the projector and changing the films. And it's just, in my opinion, it's an incredible movie. Obviously, you have to have the English subtitles in it, but Toto, which is a nickname for Salvatore, we see him as a little kid, becoming a teenager, having to run the projector because of some unseen circumstances, falling in love, having to go away, his love of his life having to go away, never coming back, and eventually he has to leave everything he knows behind. So that's kind of a basis on that's kind of what you can base the movie off of. Obviously, it's a pretty long movie. I think it's over 2 hours and 30 minutes, not including the director's cut, which has, I think, a 30-minute extra scene toward the end of the movie, which I actually haven't seen, so I'm excited to rewatch it with that scene. But it's just a great film. Actors are great, and you get to see a relationship form with Toto and the man behind the projector, whose name is Alfredo. You get to see their relationship together as they both grow up, grow older, and you see themes of love, lust. It's just kind of showing what film was like back in the day, and one boy's love for film that eventually he wants to run the projector, and he hopes that he can do something like that for a living. And I'll let you figure out what happens in that film when you watch it, because again, I highly recommend the film. It's really great. If you're a friend of mine and you want to watch it, I do have the DVD, so you can just come on by and we can watch it together. Again, it's in Italian, and it is pretty long, so if you're not a fan of foreign language films, maybe you don't want to watch it, but it's so good that I don't think you will regret wanting to watch the film. All right, my number 3 film of all time is Singing in the Rain, starring Gene Kelly, Donald O'Connor, and Debbie Reynolds. Man, I used to not be a big fan of musicals, but when I saw this film, I was hooked immediately. Again, this is another one of the films that I was shown. 3 of the films in this list, actually 4 of the films on this list, I was shown by my film teacher. The Truman Show I saw my sophomore year in my English class with the same teacher that is a film teacher, and the next 3 films on the list I've seen with my film teacher, so it really made an impact on me. I have a very strong passion for both politics and for film. So again, my number 3 film is Singing in the Rain. And the reason I like it so much, it's just a great film. I mean, great acting by Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds. They portray great people. Donald O'Connor is hilarious as Cosmo, the best friend of Gene Kelly's character, Don Lockwood. It's just a great film. The main plot of it is the transition from silent films to what they call talkies or talking films back in the around mid-20s when the jazz singer, it takes place around when the jazz singer comes out, and Gene Kelly's character, Don Lockwood, and Lena Lamont, who is played by Gene Hagen, they are both silent film stars, and they have to make the transition to talking film, which has some hilarious results, but eventually everything ends up great between all the characters, I guess you could say, except for Lena Lamont. I'll let you know, guess what happens to her at the end if you actually go and watch the movie. The musical numbers are excellent. Some of the best musical numbers that I have personally ever heard. I have been recommended to watch La La Land, but I haven't gotten to watching it. Singing in the Rain, my favorite musical by far. Just a great film. The characters are very likable. You like the characters once you meet them, except for one character in specific. You'll know what I'm talking about if you go out and watch the film. All the numbers are great. The Singing in the Rain number, iconic number, imitated by so many people. One of the most iconic moments in musical history. Gene Kelly's character, Don Lockwood, is incredible. It just shows what actors were back then. Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor were actors, singers, dancers. It was just, they did everything. It was incredible. I did hear, though, that it was a very stressful filmmaking process, especially for Debbie Reynolds, who was 18 at the time of the filming, and she didn't really have much of a dancing background. And Gene Kelly had to really push her to make the film great, which she didn't then appreciate later in her life. Obviously, Debbie Reynolds is the mother of beloved Carrie Fisher, who was most notably Princess Leia in the Star Wars movies. But I don't know how to explain it much more. It's less than a 2-hour-long movie, so it's not that long if you wanted to go out and watch it, and I highly recommend you do watch it. Even if you don't like musicals, it has the perfect mix between music and acting, and just normal voice scripts. It's a great film. Singing in the Rain, obviously named after the main song in it. It's in color, released back in the 50s, 1952 to be specific. Great film. I'm sure you could find it somewhere. Excellent. One of my favorite actors of all time is Gene Kelly, and that's because of this film, and also An American in Paris, which I most recently watched. Also another great film. My number 2 film of all time, I had this battle when I first watched this film between this and my number 1, but my number 1 has been my number 1 for so long I don't think it can ever replace it. My number 2 film is The Godfather, the first Godfather, the one with old Vito Corleone, the one with Marlon Brando. Wow, what a film. It's very long. I will say it's a very long film. It's an over 3-hour long film, but it is just incredible. I didn't understand the hype of it when I first saw it on all these lists. This was before I watched the movie. I didn't really understand all the hype surrounding it, but once I listened to it, and once I watched it, I understood everything about it. Al Pacino is excellent. Marlon Brando, I'm pretty sure he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, if I'm not mistaken. So he did excellent. All of the brothers were amazing. Actually, for those who don't know, the nickname for Chris Cuomo, Fredo, actually comes from this movie for the younger brother, Fredo Corleone, who is considered the weak brother in this entire debacle. So that's why some conservative trollsters, jokesters, memesters, whatever you want to call Chris Cuomo Fredo. It's really interesting film. It's one of those gangster films similar to Goodfellas, or most recently, which will be released soon on Netflix, The Irishman, which was filmed by Scorsese. But again, it's just an excellent film in my opinion. My personal favorite actor in that was obviously Al Pacino's character, Michael Corleone. Did excellent, going from good boy to bad boy, going from American person to Italian mobster, American war hero to Italian mobster, pretty much. And that's all I'm going to get into really for the plot of the movie, because even though it's 3 hours long, you could really describe the plot in around a couple of sentences. And that's why the film, in my opinion, is pretty good, because even you have to see it. Even though I can explain the plot to you in so little amount of words, you still have to see it to believe my plot. A great mix of love, of violence, of gangsters, of compassion, everything is in that film, and that's one of the reasons why it's my number 2. The acting is incredible, as I mentioned before. It's pretty long. You have to have an afternoon filled out. Again, it's over 3 hours long, but it will be highly worth it. I do also like the second Godfather movie. That one is also great. Get to see the beginnings of Vito Corleone with Robert De Niro in it, so we had Al Pacino and Robert De Niro kind of in their primes. But all right, my number 1 film, it's really been working up to this, and my favorite film of all time is the very first Back to the Future, starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Brown. I believe his name is Christopher Brown. So it's Doc Brown and Michael J. Fox is obviously Marty McFly. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of science fiction, but man, this film is just incredible. I love Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly. I know a lot of some other actors were in line to play Marty, but I don't know if I can imagine Marty McFly being someone else other than Michael J. Fox. It's just incredible. I love the character development of Marty being this kid who's kind of like, I guess I should rephrase that. He doesn't really develop much per se as a character. He's really more of he goes from more of an arrogant kid to a bit more of a sympathetic kid as he tries to help out his father. He goes back in time to 1955, messes a whole bunch of things up, and he has to really fix them. And I think that's a good lesson. I mean, he is supposed to be a 17, 18-year-old kid, so my age pretty much. And it just shows how easy it is to really just make a mistake without really wanting to. I mean, we have him, he goes back in time, messes a bunch of things up, and now he has to go and fix them. I think that's a good lesson for someone about personal responsibility, something that conservatives really try to go after. It's this kid who made a mistake, and instead of complaining to Doc Brown for having him to fix it, he has to fix it himself. Obviously, because or else if he doesn't, he will die, but still, same thing. Personal responsibility is really important to understand about this movie. And it's just great. Leah Thompson, I mean, first of all, she was a very attractive lady as Marty McFly's mom. But also, she did a great job as a mom. Obviously, she was the mom back in the 80s when Marty was back in his own time. But the father of Marty McFly, George McFly, I don't remember the actor's name, but he also did a great character. Everyone in the film was just great. Biff Tannen's character, the actor for Biff Tannen, great villain. Again, someone that I can't really imagine being someone else. There are certain roles in films that they're portrayed so well that you really can't imagine someone else playing them. Like, personally, I don't know if I could imagine anyone else besides Marlon Brando being Vito Corleone in the first Godfather. It's certain films like those that really you can't imagine someone else being in it. And I think they have 2 characters in it. 3, in my opinion. I don't know if you could really replace Doc Brown. You can't replace Biff Tannen, and of course you cannot replace Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly. And the entire concept of time travel, I mean, everyone has wanted to time travel, go back in time, go forward in time. I personally would love to go back to 1776 to see the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That would be a great moment. Go back to the 60s, before the Civil War, when Abraham Lincoln was elected, see his Gettysburg Address. So many points in history that we could see, and so much that we could see in the future if we had time travel. It's just a great concept. The DeLorean was awesome. Hot tub time machine was obviously a good concept, but come on, if you're gonna, as Doc Brown said, if you're gonna time travel, you might as well do it in style. And I think that's good. I like the DeLorean edition, big car back in the 80s. And again, my favorite film, Back to the Future, with Michael J. Fox. I watched it so many times, I can't keep count. And it's one of the only films that I can say that I can watch multiple times and I will not get tired of it. That's how much I love it. Obviously, for those who are listening, it's going to be some controversy because obviously some of these films might not even be in your top 10, maybe not even your top 20. But again, that's the good thing about this country is that we can all have opinions, and I can have my opinions on what movies I personally like in my top 5. But anyway, that's going to be it for today's episode. A bit of apologies for a bit of a longer episode. I'm going to try to keep this as unedited as possible, just cutting out some of the silences that I might have had. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you on Thursday. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to The Giraldo Show.